Okay. Thank you very much. Welcome everyone to tonight's regularly scheduled council meeting. I want to open with a few very short comments on behalf of council. Council made a decision last week and it relates to a matter that's been quite public recently. As most residents are aware, Coquitlam has been in the news over the last 10 days on a serious matter related to convicted killer Alan Schoenborn. As most of you know, just over a year ago, Mr. Schoenborn was convicted in the brutal murder of his 3 children, Caitlin 10, Max 8, and Corden 5. While the court ruled that Alan Schoenborn had indeed killed his 3 children, it also found that he was not criminally responsible due to a mental illness. At that moment, he became a patient rather than a prisoner, and he began his treatment at the Forensic Psychiatric Hospital at Colony Farm here in Coquitlam. About a year later, 11 days ago, on the 3rd anniversary of the death of Caitlin, Max, and Corden, the review board determined that Mr. Schoenborn should be granted escorted leave into our community. And in so doing, they raised enormous concerns here in Coquitlam and across the province about the way in which we treat those who commit violent or horrendous offenses while mentally ill. All of council wants to express our deep and fervent outrage at this decision. We've heard from a great many residents who are similarly outraged by the decision. Of course, it's a decision that is made even more incomprehensible by the revelation that Schoenborn's ex-wife, the mother of Caitlin, Max, and Corden, lives here in Coquitlam. Last week, all members of City Council unanimously voted to write to the Federal Minister of Justice calling for changes to the Criminal Code of Canada to prevent this kind of outrageous decision. We've also called on the provincial government to join in that call, and we've called on citizens to do the same. When the review board found out that Darcy Clark lived in this very community, the community in which they had decided to grant escorted leave to her children's killer, the review board decided to review that decision, and that reconsideration of the decision will take place this coming Thursday. I want to let our community know that on Wednesday afternoon, on the eve of the review board's reconsideration of their decision, a rally is being organized for 5 p.m. here at City Hall. The rally is being organized with the blessing of the family and offers citizens a chance to be heard on this important issue. I want to make something very clear, though. For more than a century, Coquitlam has had a very strong tradition of support for persons with mental illness. As home to BC's largest mental health facility, Riverview Hospital, we have a very strong passion for the needs of the mentally ill, the need for excellent treatment, the need for great understanding. You won't find a community more supportive on the issue of support for mental health than Coquitlam. However, we also need to stand up for the rights of victims and the rights of citizens. Perhaps one of the saddest coincidences in all of this is the fact that this unsettling decision came out to be debated during a week that is proclaimed across the country as National Victims of Crime Awareness Week. If you look at the parking lot of the RCMP building next door, you'll see our RCMP vehicles displaying a purple ribbon similar to this one, joining in the call for victims to have a voice. Tonight, City Council joins in that call, and similarly, the feeling of safety in our community and the sense of confidence in our justice system needs to be restored. So as I've said, we've sent letters to ministers and we've called for senior governments for action, but we also want to support our residents who want to join in that call. So it's this Wednesday here at City Hall at 5 p.m. City Council stands united in this call for action, this call for justice for Darcy Clark and justice for Caitlin, Max, and Corden. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. First item on tonight's agenda are the minutes of the regular council meeting held Monday, April 4th, 2011. The recommendation is that council approve those minutes.
Second. Moved by Councillor Lynch, second by Councillor Reamer. All in favour? Opposed? Carried.
Item 2 is a presentation from Rachel Niblock of the New Westminster and District Labour Council related to Day of Mourning for Workers Killed and Injured. And just ask Ms. Niblock to the podium.
Your Worship, Councillors, my name is Rachel Niblock. I work and I live in Coquitlam. I'm a member of the Canadian Union of Public Employees, Local 873, that represents the ambulance paramedics of British Columbia. QP 873 is affiliated with the New West District Labour Council, which covers 14 municipalities and over 60,000 unionized workers in all occupational sectors. I'm here tonight on behalf of that council. Throughout our history, the labour movement has been instrumental in shaping the laws that govern the health and safety of workers in British Columbia and in Canada. As part of our ongoing efforts to bring attention to important issues of workplace health and safety, the labour movement joins with communities and local government across Canada every year to recognize April 28th as the National Day of Mourning for workers killed and injured on the job. This year, the Day of Mourning ceremony will be held at Burnaby City Hall on Thursday, April 28th at noon. There is an enormous emotional toll and financial hardship placed on individuals and families impacted by workplace injury, disease, or death. The affiliated unions through the BC Federation of Labour and the Labour Councils work tirelessly and invest significant resources to raise issues, develop education programs, and to promote and lobby for legislative changes. Unions also collaborate with communities to press for better regulations, increased enforcement, as well as to strive to obtain fair and equitable compensation for workers. True accidents in the workplace are almost rare, but incidents, as they're now called by WCB, are plenty, and they're often caused by poorly enforced work-safe regulations. Some examples of these are workers with little or inadequate training, workers without proper protection, working excessive hours, working alone, and sadly, when an employer takes no responsibility for a worker's safety. April 5th, 2010, in West Virginia, 29 mine workers lost their lives. Having had more than 150 non-compliance orders filed against them, including warnings of the high levels of methane gas in the mine shafts, the company and its CEO continued to operate in unsafe conditions, putting profits ahead of workers' lives. On October 19th, 2010, two Tofino paramedics, Joanne Fuller, age 59, and Ivan Polovic, age 65, lost their lives when the ambulance they were in plunged over a cliff into Kennedy Lake. This happened in the early hours of the morning on an unsafe stretch of highway. We will probably never know if their deaths were caused by the unsafe highway or if worker fatigue played a role in the long hours that they worked that day. In 2002, the provincial government passed Bill 49, the Compensation Amendment Act. The WCB regulations were cut by 1/3. Employers' WBC premiums are lower today than they were 30 years ago. Reducing these premiums has resulted in less effective protection and enforcement for workers, lower compensation levels, lengthy appeals, and denial of benefit for hundreds of workers. The evidence of greater enforcement for WCB regulations is clear, yet the provincial government over the past decade has supported massive changes to the services provided by WCB that have negatively impacted thousands of workers. Our WCB system in British Columbia needs to be strengthened, not weakened. Our laws must be protected, not eroded. WorkSafe have invested more money in education, and that is an important component, but alone it has not reduced the number of worker deaths or injuries. In fact, with laws in British Columbia that permit a child of 12 years of age to be employed, young workers' deaths have now doubled the number of deaths in any other age category. In closing, trade unions and others make workers' health and safety a priority every day, but all of us must share in the responsibility to ensure that human life, or the quality of human life, is never sacrificed for profit or productivity. We ask that you, as community leaders, to promote the need for balance and fair compensation with a system that provides the greatest protection for workers and a low tolerance for non-compliance. Please add your voice to change. On April 28th, we will remember the workers who did not come home and share with their families the grief. On April 28th, we recommit ourselves to fight for the living. Thank you all for allowing me this time to make this presentation, respectfully presented by the New West District Labour Council.
Thank you very much, Ms. Niblock. Madam.
Item 3 is a presentation from the Como Watershed Group. Just ask.
Darcy, what are you up to?
We wanted to bring some guests before you.
Good stuff.
So my name is Darcy, and I'm a board member of the Como Watershed Group. One of our other board members may enigmatically be bursting through the door any time now. I apologize in advance. First off, thank you very much, City Council, and we really appreciate coming here to present to you a couple guests from within our watershed that are doing some very interesting things which we'd like to recognize before the City of Coquitlam. This is Mr. Pierce, the Vice Principal of Montgomery Middle School, and he's going to tell us a little bit about an innovative project that these kids have been part of, and also many other kids from their middle school as well.
Thank you very much, Darcy. Again, my name is Frank Pierce, and I'm the Vice Principal at Montgomery Middle School. I apologize for not being clean-shaven tonight, but I also thank you for not having your council meeting on the evening of a playoff game. Our school has become a little bit engaged in the playoffs.
We have to get quorum of a council.
It's kind of hard, I know. This year, our staff at Montgomery Middle School has committed their professional learning time to the implementation of project-based learning. From this focus, 4 project-based learning units were created for our students. The Ravine Project, which is a project that you're going to hear a little bit about this evening, the Japan Project, the Extreme Environments Project, and the Middle Ages Project. Project-based learning is an instructional approach based upon authentic learning activities that engage students' interest and motivation. These activities are designed to answer a question or solve a problem and generally reflect the types of learning and work that people do in their everyday work outside of the classroom. Project-based learning is an example of personalized learning, which is a large part of School District 43's new vision of learning without boundaries. Mrs. Bennett, our principal, and myself are very proud of the work our staff has completed this year, and in turn absolutely thrilled to see the learning process that our students, as are represented here, have been engaged in. The collaboration with Watershed Wise has been an integral part of Ravine Project this year, and the collaboration with the Como Watershed Group has also been an integral part, as you're going to see this evening. We've been very fortunate to have worked with the Como Watershed Group this year and thank them for their contributions to our school. The Ravine Project saw our students engage in a really deep learning experience with the ravine that is directly beside our school. They spent time in the ravine, working in the ravine. They spent time in their classrooms learning about the ravine and answering their own questions about why the ravine environment was important and what we needed to do as citizens and as the people who live around the ravine in the Como watershed to preserve and protect the ravine environment. I would ask our students to introduce themselves, and then I know they have a presentation and a couple of other things to say. Thank you.
You could pull the microphone down.
I'm Nathan Anderson.
I'm Isabel Antunes. I'm Jordan Andrew. I'm Flavia Parima. I'm Alyssa West. I'm Vanessa Felice. I'm Christina Gimino.
We are all grade 6 and 7 students at Montgomery Middle School. Tonight we're going to talk about project-based learning. Right now in school, in our team Nautilus, we are working on a PBL, which is a nickname for project-based learning. Our project is on the Booth Creek Ravine, which is located behind our school. There are many aspects of the project that I enjoy. For one thing, it's fun because we get to learn about the whole ecosystem of life that circles around the Booth Creek Ravine. But it's also just a tad depressing to see what the ravine has come to. Can you imagine how much garbage we found on there? One thing that I also really enjoy is that our class is broken into small groups, and we are each responsible for studying and investigating different aspects of the ravine. My group in the class is learning about the water aspect, and the small group gives us the chance to work together and keep each other motivated. We get to use a wiki page that we can post our work and converse with other people in our group. My group uses one, and if I do say so myself, we're using it very well.
One thing I enjoy about project-based learning is that it is immensely fun because of all the freedom the teacher gives you. Like usually it's do it and have it done, but now it's opened up a whole new level of freedom because yes, the teachers do check our work from time to time, but generally it's just working with your group and we get to set our own goals. Although the project is really fun, it is also very challenging. The problems we encounter are much different than everyday classroom problems. It's difficult because you are given a task, but you don't have many guidelines on how to do it. So we have to try things in order to find out that they don't work, rather than being told that they wouldn't work. After finding out that they don't work, we have to come up with a whole new idea.
One challenge I've found is that sometimes you do something or have an idea you think is great, but the rest of your group may not agree. I don't mean that being in a group is bad, but sometimes you really have to listen to what your group members are saying and try to find a compromise. Another challenge is trying to find a place to get your information. I know that there are some easy ways to get information, such as emailing people in the city to get answers for some of your group questions, or going on the internet and looking them up, but sometimes you come across a really good question that help your group get some of the overall knowledge it needs to have success, but you can't find the answer. I must admit, though, that it was really rewarding to overcome these challenges and be successful.
I hope that we have enlightened you all with some knowledge about project-based learning. PBL is fun when everybody can cooperate and everyone can get their work done. PBL has also allowed us to get out of the classroom and away from textbooks and towards solving a real-world problem. Even though we have talked about the pros and the cons, we would like you to know that we like this method of learning, and also like that we can have the freedom to teach each other and the community about something that is right in our own backyard. Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to speak to you tonight.
Thanks. Thanks, guys. I hope so. The Como Watershed Group, after 2 years' time of just being on the edge of existing, is at a very unusual moment of reflection, where our entire membership vacated, and we were left with a mystery as to what exactly went wrong. I don't think difficult situations between people, between organizations, the stresses that are placed on environmental groups that are attempting to share their vision with the community, with the city, is unusual to the Como Watershed Group. This presentation today is twofold for us. I mean, we'd like to say that we're still alive. We'd like to say that we are starting to build connections again in the community. And we'd also like to say that we think the city of Coquitlam, in specific instances, is doing some really interesting things that are really positively affecting the Como Watershed Group. For example, the community engagement that was going on with the Mackin Park project. Having a skate park in the middle of Mackin Park isn't exactly ideal for an environmental group, but we were really impressed with the lengths that the city went to involve people. And the park is looking really interesting. There are other things involved with the Katimavik project and some invasive species projects that city staff were involved with. There's also, I know, a sustainability committee, I believe, that's coming on board very shortly. We are going to be looking for these types of movements and leadership from the city of Coquitlam to help deal with a pretty complicated and ever-changing world when we try to incorporate these strange environmental issues into just what we do. In that spirit, we would like to present to the city of Coquitlam other than 100 trees, which are reserved for Montgomery Middle School to plant on their own in their local watershed, the rest of all the trees that we have in our nursery should be between about 100 and 150. And we hope that the city can find a good place for them somewhere in the city of Coquitlam. And we'd also like to present one tree to each councillor as a gift. Plant it where you will, or come and join Montgomery Middle in planting these trees at Montgomery Middle School in the ravine, Popeye Creek and Booth Creek, I believe. Let's hand them over. I don't get to pick who gets what tree, so that's just up to the kids.
We'll fight over it later. Well, I want to thank you. This is amazing. Thank you very much. I grew up 4 houses from Monty Middle, Monty Junior High as it was then, and I spent a lot of time in that ravine, to my mother's chagrin. There we go. Look at that. Well, thank you. Oh, that's great. Okay. I'm going to put it down. Here you go. Fred. There you go.
Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, we're going to have to get the last 2 moved because I know there's a cameraman over there that'll be all upset if he has to try to film. I think at this point it's Councillor Sikora through a tree, but... Richard.
Any questions for ourselves or the kids?
Okay, there's a question actually, Councillor Reamer. I think I know what her question is. Go ahead.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I'm just wondering when the Monty planting is occurring.
On Friday, April 29th, although that date is yet to be confirmed. And we had initial conversations, Montgomery did, through a company for their involvement, so we'll be exploring that as we go.
Okay, that good. If you could let us know, that would be great. Thank you.
Would all councillors like to know?
Absolutely. Yep. That'd be great.
Will do. It's okay.
Thank you very much. All the students, thank you so much for, I read something about this and I'm so excited about the projects that you're taking on. I know all of council wants to join, and thank you for the work you're doing in your community. Outstanding. Merci beaucoup. Now, because of the great work you're doing in your community, we won't make you stay and watch the rest of what could be a really interesting council meeting. Thank you so much. Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Next item are minutes of the Land Use and Economic Development Standing Committee meeting held Monday, April 11th. The recommendation is to receive those minutes.
Moved by Councillor McDonnell, second by Councillor Reamer. All in favour? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
The first item arising out of that meeting is a referral to public hearing report on application for zoning amendment bylaw number 4182-2010 at 606 to 618 Langside Avenue and 714 Breslay Street. And the committee's recommendation is that City of Coquitlam zoning amendment bylaw number 4182-2010 be referred to a public hearing.
Moved by Councillor Asmundson, second by Councillor McDonnell. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 4.4 is development permit authorization for Celadon at 1128 Kensal Place and 3102 Windsor Gate. The committee recommendation is that Council 1 approve the signing and sealing of development permit 10008152 DP, and that Mayor and City Clerk be authorized to execute this permit on behalf of the City of Coquitlam, and 2, direct staff to undertake a comprehensive analysis of parking within the Windsor Glen area to be funded by Polygon Development Limited as a basis for consideration of any future developments and parking variances within Windsor Glen.
Second.
Moved by Councillor Reamer, seconded by Councillor Sikora. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 4.5 is authorization for issuance of development variance permit at 825 Gautheir Avenue, 450 Joyce Street, and 411 Schoolhouse Street. The committee recommendation is that Council approve the signing and sealing of development variance permit 11007776 DV, and that the Mayor and City Clerk be authorized to execute this permit on behalf of the City of Coquitlam, and be appropriate to call for speakers at this time.
Yes. This is the development variance permit, so we run a mini public hearing. For any persons in the audience who may wish to express their point of view on this development variance permit application. Are there any speakers to this item? Please come forward. Stand at the microphone and state your name and address for the record, please.
Thank you. My name is Charles Paltiel. I live at 834 Corny Avenue, directly across from Baden-Powell Elementary. I just found out about this variance and the addition of a portable at the school and a paving of some repaving. And I haven't been able to find out I have some concerns that I'd like to see if they're addressed in this proposal. And so the first, there are three items that I was interested in. The first was the need for redevelopment. Currently, so this is to accommodate, in the mailing we got, it was stated that this was to accommodate the full-day kindergarten, which is now mandated by the province. So in terms of need, within the school currently there are 2 out-of-school programs being run. There's a daycare, and there's a privately run Montessori program. And it seems like it would make more sense financially, from my point of view, to use the classrooms that are currently being used for these private programs for an actual school program instead of paying for a portable, which within a couple of years will look very shabby. They don't seem to look very good for long. And the second point on need was how this proposal addresses the Austin Heights redevelopment, which is Austin Heights is adjacent to Baden-Powell Elementary. I just went last week to a demonstration of a large apartment tower. So they're talking about how this plan, the Austin Heights redevelopment plan, is increasing density in the area. So in terms of buying a portable for the school and having a variance to install it, it may just be a drop in the bucket for the long run. So that's need. The second issue that I'd like to see is since I live directly across from where they intend to pave over what was once a nice grassy area, which was actually sort of destroyed when they did the earthquake preparedness. They said they were going to rehabilitate it and put the grass back in after they used it for the workmen's portables. That didn't happen. That was a couple of years ago. But that was it's still nice. It's still grassy. It's not as nice as it was. So I'm directly across from where they'll be putting in a basketball court, probably just right across the road. And I know I actually used to live close to a basketball court. and in the summer it's can be unpleasant when kids are playing until all hours basketball. Your windows are open because it's hot in the summer, but that's not a big deal. But the third issue, which is probably the most important, is probably security. And I wondered how security had been addressed by this proposal. So in the southwest corner of the school, there it seems to be a favorite place for kids partying in the summer. I've also had to chase off IV drug users, even though it's on a playground. And also in the evening, it's used year-round for drug dealers to make their transactions. Sort of if you know the area, it's Corning Avenue is a little dog-like kind of street. It goes behind Baden-Powell Elementary, so it's kind of a little bit isolated. There's also homeless people sleeping under an overhang to the school. So it's just a concern that any more enclosing of this area will make it a even more attractive place for these kinds of congregations. So I was wondering if there's going to be a plan to increase the security or any kind of things like that. Anyway, thank you very much for your time. I hope this is the right forum for expressing my concerns.
Well, I'll tell you this, it sort of is. The development variance permit is one to vary our construction requirements, and it relates primarily to the servicing of the site, the curb, sidewalks, and such things. We can't actually affect what the school board wants to put on its property because it's own school, so it's not, that's not so much, it's not really what we get to do, but they're very interesting points. I know that Councillor Reid has some question. Councillor Reid is actually the chair of the Land Use Committee, and did you have a question for this?
Well, yes, I think that this gentleman has some valid points. I have a picture here, and Councillor Nicholson and I were looking at it. He has some valid points, and maybe and perhaps these should be addressed on this particular site, because we haven't heard from anyone else on any of the other school sites, but perhaps we could withhold our approval on this particular school until this gentleman has a chance to address some of these issues. If we're having a full-day kindergarten there, I certainly don't want any drug dealers sitting in the corner, so maybe he needs to have a conversation with the school district, and the school district can advise us accordingly.
The drug dealers usually in the evening.
But
I've seen the drug users.
You have to speak into the microphone.
We can't hear you. Just pull the microphone.
Pull it up.
The drug dealers aren't during school hours, but the drug users are actually.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
In any event, I'm willing to remove this one particular school from this if we need be until he settles this, or just, as we're not really on their school grounds, we're just sort of on the perimeter. Whatever we do isn't really going to affect this, but I think it's something that the school board should deal with.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So,
well, it's up to everyone else. Being that technically we're only dealing with the perimeter, it doesn't really, we don't really have the right to go on ground. So,
yeah, we don't have a motion on the floor right now. That was the only speaker. I thank you very much, sir. That was the only speaker among council. Myself, I've got a little bit of concern related to the extent to which we can delve into property issues and planning issues for the school board. I do think it's issues that ought to be raised to the school board, but I'm not sure that we can actually affect our decision tonight as to whether or not a curb gets built at a specific spot.
No, and I've said that, Your Worship, but perhaps onto our recommendation we could go that a homeowner has addressed council and was told to consult with the school board and bring up his issues.
Right. That sounds fine. Councillor Lynch.
Oh, thank you. And I'm of like mind. This is the DVP, so really what we're dealing with, the variance is the amount of money that we're requesting from the school district. But I'm wondering when the next meeting of the School Liaison Council Committee is, and I'm thinking that would be the appropriate way to go through it. But I don't know that we really have the legal authority to hold up this application based on the reasons that we're contemplating. So I think if in any event we should be forwarding the concerns that are raised here tonight to the school board, and I'm just wondering again when perhaps the next meeting might be. It's not for a while, so we'd have to forward it anyway. So but I don't see us being able to prevent the DVP.
Well, it might be best then at this point for council direct staff to forward these concerns on to the appropriate staff at school board and let them be aware of them and take necessary action. Councillor Nicholson.
That was my suggestion, yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Not dealing with being prompted by this gentleman's presentation, but obviously it would have been much more helpful if he'd spoken at a much earlier time to the school board. And it raises the question for me, and I'd like staff to ask the school board and bring us back an answer. I don't know what public process the school board goes through in telling neighbors what they're about to do across the street from them, or within a couple or 3 blocks, or whatever a reasonable or a walk limit is. And I think that would be helpful to us to know how it is that one of our people finds it necessary to come to council to talk about something the school board's doing on the school board's property, not having apparently had the opportunity to speak to the school board beforehand. Thank you.
Very good. Councillor Reamer.
Thank you. There was just one item that the gentleman mentioned that I think maybe staff could address, and that is the difference between portables and modular units. Because there is a slight difference, and it's probably important that the public realizes what those differences are. So, through the mayor, could I have
direct your question directly?
Thank you.
Yes, Your Worship. At committee, the school district representative did make a fairly lengthy presentation around the difference between the typical portable as opposed to the modular buildings that are being proposed here under in Coquitlam. They're much larger. They have a permanent foundation. They have a crawl space. They've got a separate area for the mechanical. They've got glazing, and they have a lifespan potentially of up to 40 years. We've been advised. So they are much more substantial buildings, much more aesthetically pleasing, and from the city's perspective, also much more desirable.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Score.
Thank you very much. If you drive up on 8th Avenue just past Kingsway, from this area, you'll see a couple of those modulars or mobile in a school grounds there now. And that one, I think there's enough concern, Mayor, was raised in here by a couple of council members here that, this gentleman is here, that he didn't know about it until just either today or yesterday about this project. The fact is that, there may be other concerns in other schools. So I'll move a tabling motion until we do resolve this and see how the school board is handling these situations. I don't think we should be passing anything that may affect other residents around their schools. It might be a simple solution. Maybe the school board ought to have some meetings in their area with the residents and see if there's any problems with it. So we'll move a tabling motion if I can get a seconder.
We don't have the right to do that.
I don't see a seconder. I don't hear a seconder. And I think it's probably because the motion before us allows the school board to be exempted from constructing some elements of curb and gutter. It's not whether or not we're going to be building portables or allowing modular construction, because those ones are entirely permitted. We can't stop those. And for that matter, I take issue because I know that there are some schools at which security is an issue, and they're not having a modular built. So I don't know that the modular is causing the security issue as much as it is perhaps a lightning rod for the issue that already exists, and some concern over whether or not this might make it worse. I too have seen some of these modular buildings. In fact, saw some today and was stopped and was quite intrigued by them. This was on 6th Avenue, right across from Queen's Park in New Westminster, not 6th Avenue. Yes, 6th Avenue. And they're built on concrete foundations. They're essentially a full-scale building. They're not a portable building. It can't be picked up and moved somewhere else. It's a modular building that gets put in place and permanently installed. They're a different building, and they're much more secure, in fact, than the portables I've seen, much more secure than the school it's next to. It's got a a security blind in front of the windows and such things like that. So I'm not certain that your issue, sir, is something that is at a development variance permit. But I'll commit to you that we will be in touch with the school board and let them know about concerns related to security at the school, and make sure that those concerns are dealt with in the way in which they may position, locate, those sorts of things. I don't know that there's much else that we can do, because this is really a variance permit that allows them to not have to install all kinds of ancillary development services around the school. So the motion to table wasn't seconded, so we're left with, is there a motion to be put on the floor? Moved by Councillor Reamer, seconded by Councillor Nicholson. The recommendation. All in favor? Opposed? That motion carries unanimously.
Next item is...
My apologies. And we may have to back up a little bit. We didn't ask for a second and third time. It was a public hearing. We've heard from one speaker. Are there any other speakers to this item? The third and final time, are there any other speakers to this item? Thank you very much. Would you like us to repeat the vote, or are you comfortable, Madam Clerk?
I'm comfortable.
Thank you.
Next item is preliminary report on application for zoning amendment bylaw number 4171-2011 at 574 Sunset Avenue. The recommendation of the Land Use Committee is that Council give first reading to City of Coquitlam zoning amendment bylaw number 4171-2011, and that bylaw number 4171-2011 be referred to public hearing.
Moved by Councillor Aspenson, seconded by Councillor Nicholson. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Next item is C5 Community Commercial Zoning Bylaw Text Amendment. The committee recommendation is that Council give first reading to City of Coquitlam Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 4209-2011 and refer bylaw number 4209-2011 to public hearing.
Moved by Councillor Reamer, seconded by Councillor Lynch. First reading and public hearing. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Next item is zoning bylaw text amendment to the M6 Retail Industrial Zone for 277 Schoolhouse Street. Committee recommendation is that Council give first reading to City of Coquitlam zoning amendment bylaw number 4208-2011 and refer the bylaw to public hearing.
Second.
Moved by Councillor Reamer, seconded by Councillor Nicholson. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Next item are minutes of the Recreation, Sports and Culture Standing Committee meeting held Monday, April 11th, 2011. The recommendation is that the minutes be received.
Moved by Councillor Lynch, second by Councillor McDonnell. All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
First recommendation arising from that meeting is in relation to Poirier Sport and Leisure Complex additional curling stairway access. The recommendation of the committee is that Council direct staff to change the scope of the Poirier Sport and Leisure Complex project to include construction of the additional curling stairway access.
Moved by Councillor Reamer, second by Councillor Lynch. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
The next item is in relation to the Rick Hansen 25th anniversary relay. The recommendation of the committee is that Council direct staff to work with the organizers of the Rick Hansen 25th anniversary relay to explore the participation of Coquitlam as outlined in the staff report dated April 5th, 2011.
Moved by Councillor Aspenson, second by Councillor Reamer. Seeing no discussion, all in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously and with some measure of enthusiasm for this wonderful one.
Next item is in relation to seasonal lighting, and the recommendation of the committee is that Council approve option 3 to redistribute the lights and new permanent display with an event for December 2011 at a cost of $79,600 in 2011 and an ongoing annual operating cost of $14,600 as outlined in the staff report.
Move the resolution.
Moved by Councillor Lynch, second by Councillor Reamer. Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you, Your Worship. At committee, we asked for some additional information on this, and I wonder if that's available this time.
Ms. McKay.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, with respect to the capital costs of $65,000, we're able to identify that those costs are split 40,000 is for the permanent safety-related lighting, particularly at City Hall, Buchanan Square. 25,000 of that is related to the permanent installation of seasonal lighting, and most of those costs are at Lafarge Lake.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Sikora.
Yeah, thank you very much. What budget is this money coming from? Is it in 2011 budget or is it not? For this work?
Ms. McKay.
I'll have to get back to you on that question.
Any other questions?
Yeah, well, I'm just wondering, where is it coming from? I didn't quite get what the director is saying.
In the report, it highlighted there was two possible funding sources, the Community Capital Fund or the Infrastructure Reserve. There is funding in either of those, and since Council wasn't specific, I would leave that up to Ms. McLeod to identify the appropriate source of funds if Council passes this resolution.
Permanent lighting.
Yeah, I know that is also that it says that it come from, a surplus, I guess, surplus in the budget, and I got great problems of spending money from our reserves and from other things that are not allocated in the budget, and that's exactly why I've been aiming at a zero-based budget. You go to zero-based budget, these kind of things couldn't happen.
Oh my God.
They couldn't happen because everything would be earmarked. Every dollar would be earmarked for a specific item. And if that item was not built or accommodated, then that would be a surplus in there, and it wouldn't happen. But in here, we seem to be bouncing one to the other and doing the year or whatever that we want with the money. Well, it's taxpayers' money, and we can't be doing what we think we should be doing.
Comes from these.
Oh, I know. I can read that. I can read the surpluses going from here to heaven.
Yeah, we've been quite prudent this year, so we were able to achieve those surpluses. It was good. Thank you very much. Councillor Sikora.
I just spoke.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sikora. Sorry, I was thanking you, Councillor Sikora. Okay. Madam Clerk.
So the motion is on the floor. It's been moved and seconded.
The motion has been moved and seconded. Further discussion? Seeing none. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Sikora is opposed. And Councillor McDonnell is opposed. The motion carries.
Next item are minutes of the Engineering, Utilities and Environment Standing Committee meeting held Monday, April 11th, 2011. The recommendation is that Council receive those minutes.
Moved by Councillor Lynch, second by Councillor Asmundson. All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Item 7 are minutes of the Strategic Priorities, Administration and Protective Services Standing Committee meeting held Monday, April 11th. The recommendation is that Council receive those minutes.
Moved by Councillor Reamer, second by Councillor Nicholson. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Recommendation arising out of that meeting. The recommendation arising out of that meeting is in relation to the library request to repurpose 2005 funding. The recommendation is that the library's request to repurpose funds received from the city to support a book security system be referred to the 2012 budget process.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Sikora, second by Councillor Asmundson. Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you, Your Worship. When committee met on this item, we were considerably delayed in getting to it. The library director was on hand to speak to the item, and I gather waited for quite a long time, but was unable to wait long enough to be able to speak. I would ask that we defer this until we're able to hear from the library director on the item. And I would move that.
Okay. So the rest of the committee recommendation was that this be referred to the budget process, so this would have no delays attached to it. Or are there any discussion about the motion to defer? Seeing none, all in favor of deferral? All opposed to deferral? Councillor Asmundson is opposed. The motion to defer carries.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Item 8 is report of General Manager, Engineering and Public Works regarding implementation of the Coquitlam River Watershed Roundtable moving forward. The staff recommendation is that Council support Coquitlam's continued participation in this initiative and appoint 2 representatives, Councillor Robinson and the Manager, Environmental Services or Delegate, to serve on the core committee for the Coquitlam River Watershed Roundtable.
Moved by Councillor Asmundson, second by Councillor Reamer. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank Councillor Robinson for her willingness to serve, as well as our Manager of Environmental Services for serving on that important committee.
Item 9 is report of City Clerk, fourth and final reading of proposed road cancellation bylaw number 4187-2011, adjacent to 3459, 3460, and 3469 Galloway Avenue. Staff recommendation is that Council give consideration to fourth and final reading of proposed road cancellation bylaw number 4187-2011.
Moved by Councillor Reamer, second by Councillor Nicholson. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 10 is report of Manager Financial Services, the 2011 annual tax rates bylaw number 4210-2011. The staff recommendation is that City of Coquitlam 2011 annual tax rates bylaw number 4210-2011 be given first 3 readings.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Nicholson, second by Councillor Reamer. Councillor Sikora.
Yeah, thank you very much. The figure of 3.18 is a wrong figure, because that's a figure that if you did not give the businesses a break, it would be 3.18. But the businesses did get a percentage, a break, so it's 3.4 something is the rate. So, you know, I think we need to tell the taxpayers exactly as it is.
Councillor Sikora.
Yes.
Yeah, that refers, the wording is an average tax increase of 3.18, and goes on to explain the impact of this policy in 2011 is a reduced tax rate for business to 2.74, yes, and an increased rate for non-property tax uses of 3.49. It's in the staff report.
Yeah, I understand that. Now, we had a surplus this year. What was the surplus in 2011 budget?
How much money were we able to save?
Chair?
Ms. McLeod.
Through the chair, there is no surplus built into the 2011 budget. The 2010 surplus experienced in the general fund was $3.4 million, and in accordance with city policy, that has been contributed to the city's infrastructure reserve to be used for one-time infrastructure projects.
So the surplus was what, 2.4 or 3.4?
$3.4 million.
$3.4
which represents approximately 2%.
So to me, that you may read it a little different, but to me, if it's $1 million per point, so it's 3% of taxpayers that we have access money in this year's budget.
We were able to save $3.4 million last year, yes.
Pardon?
We were able to save $3.4 million.
Yeah. So it's about a little better than 3%.
No, actually, the savings is approximately 2% of our expenditures. Yes, 1% of a tax increase, which is much smaller than the city's total expenditures, represents a 1% tax increase. But what we're comparing is one-time money that's available on a surplus basis to recurring money necessary to fund the recurring expenses of the city, and those two things are a little bit different.
So I hope that 3% or that $3.5 million that we have in a surplus, we can be able to roll back into a budget for 2012.
Actually, what we'll do with that money is, in accordance with policy, we've put it into the infrastructure reserve, and that will be used for one-time projects that will allow us not to increase our capital expenditure type taxes in the future.
Well, you know, I got great difficulties with that, because here's the situation. When you have a budget, you put everything that you need in that year's budget. It's not some kind of deal that if you have a bunch of surplus, then you get a wish list out and spend the money. Because in this case, then the taxes should have, instead of going up 3.48, they would have gone up about 6.7 or 7%. So what we're doing here is fictitiously budgeting again.
Councillor Sikora, we're not fictitiously budgeting.
Well, you know what?
That was last year's.
Mayor,
this was
Mayor,
last year.
please.
I'm sorry, Councillor Sikora. Councillor Sikora. Councillor Sikora.
Do you mind if I speak?
Councillor Sikora, I'd rather you didn't call our accountants as having created fictitious budgets and the council passing fictitious budgets.
We. Okay? That's the word I use. But you know what, Mayor? You seem to hate when you're being, and I think that you as a mayor should stand up for the public.
I do.
You should stand up and tell the people as it is. Don't go dancing around and telling people what they like to hear. Tell them what they should be hearing.
That's why I stood up a moment ago.
And the fact is that this budget was 3.48, and if you add another 3.25% or 3.5%, it'd be better than 7. So, but I can see what's happening. We're going to spend that money. We're going to come up with a wish list. Well, to me, I'd rather see something in a budget that is properly budgeted for, and if it's not done, the money goes back to the taxpayers where it rightfully belongs. I mean, you cannot have some, if I ran my home budget the way we run the city budget, I'd be broke. I couldn't afford the place that I'm living in. But the fact is, because sure, it's a nice wish list. Would like to have maybe oak cabinets in my home? Of course, I'd love to have that. Would I rather have maybe a BMW in my driveway? Yeah, I guess it would be too. But that's not the way we should be treating the taxpayers. We seem to treat the taxpayers, the minute there's some money around, we're going to spend it. And as I said 2 weeks ago, we're known in the community as a tax and spend council. That's exactly what's going around this city. And I don't like that kind of saying from the taxpayer, but that's exactly what they're saying. Every buck you get, you spend it. And here in today's budget, there's some more additions on. And we add on and spend. You can't do it. You got to come down to reality and live within the budget. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm really not sure where to begin. So let's start with last year's surplus. $3.4 million, about 2% of our total expenditures. The result of, first of all, very careful budgeting coming into 2010, when I wasn't even here to help. And that's right.
Think how good we'll be now.
That's right. And hard work by all our staff to keep costs down and in control. And they did. They were sufficiently concerned with the state of the economy, challenges to our tax revenues through properties dropping off or having their assessments reduced because of the state of their work, that staff were all concerned and challenged to save money wherever they could, and they did well. And that's why we managed to come in 2% under our expenditure budget. The policy of transferring that surplus to our infrastructure reserve to begin to provide the funding to replace the massive investments that we have in buildings and plant equipment all over the city as it comes up for renewal. That policy has been in place for many years, during most of which Councillor Sikora was right here on council. That transfer for this past year, council has asked for the opportunity to reconsider whether they wish to make some other use of some of that funds during 2011 as opportunities present themselves, and that's just good household management in our city. And I support the tax rate bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Asmussen.
Well, echoing on what Councillor Nicholson said, I think we've done a very good job. When you look at, we have gone on target at 98% of the budget, and it's far better to be at 2% under your expenditures than to be 2% over and having to cut out more money the next year. And to go into the capital reserve is because we have an infrastructure deficit in regards to our facilities in this city. And we have many great needs because they were not funded for years, and that's why we had to pay today's dollars for the replacement of an arena and a pool, and there's many other facilities that were not properly funded. The best piece of legislation that's come out in a long time is the capital tangible assets regulation that now mandates that all governments have to show their asset base, what they have from their roads, their buildings and everything, money being put aside so the public can truly see, are we properly managing our budgets? Are we having the money put aside to replace our assets? We are working towards that goal, but we're not there yet, that we're putting away the proper amount of money to properly replace our existing assets. But before you didn't have to do that. You could let the roads go, you could let a lot of things go and not fund them, and it wouldn't show up. We had to do a 1% tax increase on this council to improve our roads budget for 5 years because there was a $4 million structural deficit of underfunding in the roads budget. And we've been trying to play catch up and fix up the roads ever since. I think staff has done a wonderful job on balancing our books and managing our accounts, and to be 2% onto the good is far better than being 2% over and having to make significant cuts. So I agree with Councillor Nicholson, and I thank staff for doing a very good job on managing our books through difficult times to bring in a surplus, and I applaud staff for picking up the challenge and working those extra hours to make this happen. Thank you.
Councillor Lynch.
There was a couple last-minute changes, shall we say, to the budget when we were about to finalize it, and there was some. I know that we were talking about the certain comfort levels we had as a council and as myself, and there was one item that I don't really recall, but I recall it was probably within the last hour as we were finalizing the budget and trying to get it lower, and it had something to do with about a $500,000 either that we weren't going to repay right away or a transfer, and I was actually trying to prod my memory with Councillor Nicholson, but he can't recall either. I just wonder if Ms. McLeod could identify that for me.
Through the chair, I believe that what you're talking about was a $500,000 vacancy allowance in the budget. One of the things that we do experience is every year we do tend to have a small surplus because we do have vacancies. With a staff complement the size of the city, there's always a few people away here or there, so there tends to be a bit of a vacancy gap. If we have larger vacancies, we tend to have a larger surplus. So built into the budget this year for the first time is a $500,000 vacancy allowance, so we reduced our tax rate a little bit to assume that we would have that level of vacancy in the organization.
So, and in the past, you've identified certain areas and you've cautioned us on whether or not we should be doing these one-time initiatives in order to keep the tax rate down, or some things that are not sustainable. If we hadn't done that one time that we're doing this year to keep the tax rate down, where would that money then have gone next year? Would it have been rolled over to the infrastructure reserve?
If we had experienced the same level of vacancy as we have this year, then we would again have a surplus, and it would go by policy into the infrastructure reserve for one-time items.
And I remember we had some discussion about the hiring of the RCMP officers, and at the time we were trying to determine at what point the RCMP would fulfill the vacancies, and we were told at the time that they actually had already had over capacity of the officers because they'd hired some in addition for the Olympics, and so we were actually starting to pay from those police officers as of January because they were already filled positions. How does that affect the vacancies?
What that'll do is when we budget for new positions, we budget positions to start on January 1st. That's part of the reason that we have a surplus at the end of the year, because we don't get every single position on January 1st. In the case of the RCMP officers, historically, we've generally got them around mid-year, which creates some of our surplus. In this particular year, we got them all January 1st, so that the historic vacancies that you would tend to see in the RCMP will likely be less for 2011 than they have been in other years.
Yeah, I understand that. I think my question wasn't clear. I was trying to determine how much of the vacancy savings that we normally would have incurred or benefited from, we won't benefit from this year because we aren't going to have that vacancy because we've fulfilled those positions as of January 1st instead of April, or when we normally would be able to get the officers from depot.
Hard to say. We normally have a vacancy savings related to RCMP in the range of $1 million through the course of the entire year. This year, it'll depend on how many people are away, but I would think it would be minimized by at least half. That's a rough guess early in the year.
Okay. And as a percentage, the $500,000, what percentage of the vacancy would that be the same as normally?
Well, our non-RCMP labor is about $65–70 million. So what's that? So 1%. About 1%. Sorry, 0.1%. It's not that high.
Okay. this budget more than pushes my comfort level of where we're going. I think I've expressed in the past how I feel that we've loaned out our internal revenue, our internal reserves as much as we can. And I fully understand when we went to borrowing money for the Coast Meridian works and stuff like that, but we borrowed as far as we can internally. We've now gone externally. We're taking money from our vacancy savings, and I think that there's no one going to say we don't want to keep the tax rate down, but I think we're doing a lot of things that are not what we've done traditionally. As you said, there's some things we're doing this year, and I think that, as I've said before, I'm concerned that we're making these type of decisions based on the fact that we're concerned about what the impact will be on people who are continuing to run for office. But thank you.
Thank you. And I will speak as well about the tax rate bylaw. This is the challenges we have every year, of course, is how do you establish a budget that's responsible? And I want to take my hat off again, as other council members have, to the team in finance who have worked through, again, an incredibly difficult year. 2009 was a tremendously difficult year, as was 2010. And 2011's budget wasn't a whole lot easier yet, because we're still facing those challenges associated with low interest rates on our reserves, and we have tremendous, significant amount of money that we have to invest over the year. And the interest rate has traditionally funded part of the city's programs. With a low interest rate, those reserves don't produce the kinds of interest, and that's the challenge. That's one of the big challenges we've had as a city. And I was amazed, as all council was, I believe, that staff were able to work through the kinds of rigor, the discipline that was necessary, and the council was able to do that to produce a $3.4 million surplus last year, at a year that was going to be particularly difficult. This year's budget, we went through, again, a tremendous amount of discipline to try to make sure that we kept the tax rate as low as possible while still being able to invest in those things. I was uncomfortable with some of the elements of it, as every council member undoubtedly was uncomfortable with elements of it. And on balance, I think it's a very prudent budget. It allows that we will, in an unusually difficult time, be even more cautious than we normally are. But what do you do with the $3.4 million? You do as we have in the past, because earlier tonight we voted on a small element that said we've got some surplus here. We should build a staircase. That was unanimous across council, that we should use the surplus of a project to build an element that the community was asking for on a brand new building, a building that needed to be replaced 20 years ago and wasn't. And we took it upon this council to fund the reconstruction of a really significant amenity in our community. There's other amenities that need the same, though. We need Place Mayorville rebuilt. We need to work on some lacrosse facilities, for example. We need a new library here in the town center, and all of those capital projects need to be built. But there's a bunch of other ones that we don't even think about. Councillor Asmundson mentioned paving. Last year we did 5 years' worth of paving, partly because of some federal infrastructure grants that we were able to capitalize on. But 5 years of paving has to be paid for. It will save us money in the long run, but it's important that we recognize the kinds of investments, the capital investments involved in 5 years of paving. Last week there was a major pipe burst, a water main, an asbestos cement water main. There are a bunch of those still in our community that need to be replaced. They were installed years and years ago when that was an appropriate type of pipe. It does need to be replaced, and that one on Ebert is in line for being replaced. And it's dollars like these, the $3.4 million surplus from last year, that we'll be able to capitalize on, we'll be able to use to fund those kinds of investments in improving this community and covering some of the deficiencies that we're left with from years ago. So I'm supportive of this tax rate bylaw. It's appropriate, and I believe, and I think, once again, hats off to staff, hats off to council for the work that was needed on this year's tax bylaw, particularly this year's budget in particular. So, the motion is the tax rate bylaw. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Sikora is opposed. Councillor Lynch is opposed. The motion carries.
That concludes the items on the formal agenda.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn will be in order. Moved by Councillor McDonnell, second by Councillor Reamer. All in favor? Opposed? Sorry?
I did have an item that I wanted to discuss.
I called for items. Do you? Okay. Well, what would you?
Okay. The one thing that bothers me, we've sat here for a little better than 2 years, 2.5 years, and you know the difficulty that I do have, great difficulty, is the fact that the mayor speaks last and he debates every item. And the chair is supposed to conduct himself by running the meeting. The mayor cannot argue a point or discuss an item. If you want to do that, you must step off down from the chair if you want to debate it. And that's what's been happening. So, I find it very, very difficult. The fact is that you go into debating items when you're the chair, and the chair does not debate items. So you can read the charter as many times as you want, but that's the way it is, that the mayor can speak as many times as you want, but you cannot debate it. There's a fine line between debating and not debating. And debating is you debate every item. You debated this last item. And you make sure you always last. And if I put my button on again to speak, I cannot speak for a second time. And there's many things what you say are not true. Are just totally not true. But you can't correct you because you have the privilege of saying you can't speak for the second time. I have to have a council resolution for you to speak for the second time. Well, I think, you know what? What is good for me is good for the mayor and good for every other council member. And we should always make sure that we follow the policies that we set. There's not a policy for the mayor and policy for the council members. We're all elected. We have all the same rights. And that's very, very simple. You can look at that chart as many times as you want. And I'm finished, okay? But next time I'll challenge the chair with you debating an item.
Well, thank you. With deference to your years on council, I won't respond. I just will read out you said we should stick to council procedure. So here's the council procedure bylaw. And I'm looking at 11.1.3. The council procedure bylaw says the mayor may speak at a meeting at any time without leave.
Mr. Chairman, not debate.
Well,
that's what I'm getting at, Mayor. Not speak, it's debate.
Well,
and that's what you do.
Councillor Sikora, I didn't interrupt you. You've accused me of interrupting, so then you interrupted me. And I will read that, and then I will read this other one that this is again in the council procedure bylaw. And if you want to move to change the procedure bylaw, then I will try to enforce the rules that council changes. But right now, I'm required to enforce these rules, and this rule says, except that otherwise resolved, a member may speak only once to a matter, except that a member may speak more than once to a matter with leave of the chair, or to explain a material part, or to ask a question pertinent to the matter under debate. It also says members may not speak for more than 5 minutes at a time. I regularly permit you to exceed that, and I have been criticized by members. So I'm left with, if council resolves to have me not enforce the procedure bylaw, then please, I'd be willing to accept such a motion. But council criticizes when we don't follow the procedure bylaw, so we're sort of stuck.
Mayor, you're not getting the point. I'm saying that you debate an item from the chair.
Thank you, and I won't debate that one.
To do that.
I won't debate that one.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lynch.
Well, I can't fully support what Councillor Sikora is saying because I think that the mayor's office does have certain privileges that go with that. But I think what we've expressed before is, and I'll concur with Councillor Sikora on this, is that you do take liberties with the amount of times you talk and when you talk, and I think we've raised that with you before. And we certainly have raised that with you at council table. So although I'm not totally supportive, I think we have asked that perhaps you don't take the opportunity to have the last word and give the longest speech of the night on every issue. And I think that's kind of where Councillor Sikora was going.
Thank you. Anybody else? Seeing none. The motion was to adjourn. The motion, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Are there any questions on tonight's agenda? Any questions? Thank you very much.